Cassner. This is the definition. This is the definition. Okay. You ready? Hi, welcome to this video. It's me, Emily's Reject, and my cat, Casper. I want to talk about 10 books that I read in 2023 that have really impacted me and changed me, and that I would highly recommend that you get as well. Some of these are music-related books, some of these are not music-related books. It's a wide variety. I handpicked and chose ones that I really loved and that changed me, and I hope that they can do the same for you. These are the books that we're going to talk about. Go hang out in your bed, put some headphones in, make some hot tea, get cuddled under your blanket, turn down the lights. As you can tell, we got the blue lighting. Casper's in his bed. Stay tuned for the end because there's going to be a little surprise when we get to book 10. Here we go. Book 1 is the Emetophobia Manual. Looks like this. Free yourself from the fear of vomit and reclaim your life by Goodman. I started to read this book when my emetophobia had significantly dwindled down, and reading about all these methods and exposures and just all these ideas was really helpful. And honestly, I wish that I would have been able to read this a long time ago because I learned so much from the book. Honestly, I wish that I would have been able to read this a long time ago because I learned so much from the book. You kind of understand why you're feeling the way that you do, but they also include a long list of exposures, and they talk about different types of exposures, and they include journal prompts to do, and there's QR codes to images. So when you're doing exposures for something like emetophobia, you don't just like make yourself throw up and try to get over it. Making yourself vomit is not an exposure. They give so many different types of exposures. I'll just read a couple. Pretend to vomit in a toilet with water in your mouth. Print out barfing photos and tape them to a wall. Practice writing and saying triggering words like vomit, barf, throw up, that stuff. And yeah, they do have QR codes in here where they will show you like triggering pictures, and the pictures get slightly more triggering, just like this as you look at them. And really the biggest thing about this book is you want to continue ongoing exposures to emetophobia because you can easily relapse. You can easily relapse depression. You can easily relapse panic disorder. And you can also easily relapse into emetophobia. So this is a book kind of to keep with you for life if you've ever struggled with emetophobia. And I truly believe, although my situation is a little different when I was introduced to the book, that this can probably completely cure somebody with emetophobia. So highly, highly recommend this book. Book 2 is one I have just recently read about Alexandra Trusova. It says the girl who defies gravity and changes the world of figure skating. So Alexandra Trusova, this is her. This is her when she was a little bit younger. She looks a little different now because she's dyed her hair red. She's known for starting quad jumps in women's skating. And she was really trapped in this abusive coach dynamic. And after the Olympics, she was able to get herself out of it. You know, she dyed her hair this red, which to me just like represents strength. And she fought for herself to get out of this abusive coaching situation. And she significantly inspired me when I saw her get out of that abusive dynamic. And a big thing that I noticed about her at the Olympics is I see a lot of ladies doing figure skating, and they have these really dainty routines that are very like feminine type style. And I'm not saying her routine wasn't feminine, but just very like dainty and lyrical and just nice. But her routine to Corella specifically, Frida was cool too, but Corella, which was her free skate, highly recommend looking it up, changed me so much. When I was having a hard time last year, I would watch her routine. I would get strength from that song and from watching her. And she just had this strong look on her face, like nobody could touch her. And I highly, highly look up to her, and I am highly inspired by her. Her name is Alexandra Trusova, but her nickname is Sasha. So she goes by Sasha Trusova quite a bit. Yeah, I actually started to learn a little bit of Russian just because I've been so inspired by her. And she's really the reason why I was able to change my life the way that I have. And I really look up to her. She's known for her mature character and her nerves of steel in practicing and in competitions, and just being an incredible hard worker and highly persistent. And I'll just give you 2 quotes from this book that really resonate with me, and that might inspire you to take out this book as well. The girl who is not afraid to try something new was not afraid to go on and reach her goals. The girl who breaks the ceiling with her head and who is therefore followed by others, hence her quad jumps. If Sasha wants something, she'll get it. She'll fall down, get up, and try again. That's her character. Book 3 is Atomic Habits. I talk about stuff from this book with my students a lot. I feel like a lot of the stuff in this book I already knew just from being a musician. And when you're a musician or an athlete, or you have a hobby that's something that you're really passionate about, that is almost surpassing the level of being a hobby, you know how to create good habits and how to break bad habits because you have that passion for something. So I talk about a lot of the stuff in here with my students quite a bit. Really, it's doing just that. So they talk about how to develop good habits, and then there's also the section about how to break bad habits and replacing them with good habits. And I don't want to spoil all the tips and tricks in this book, but I will give the general kind of key points. So they talk about when you're trying to create or break a habit, to make it obvious, make it attractive, make it easy, and then make it satisfying. Book 4 is Teaching Genius, which is about Dorothy DeLay. It was written by Barbra, Laurie, Sand. So they give a little bit of a history about Dorothy DeLay because she was such a well-known violin instructor at Juilliard. And she had a lot of encouragement from her mother early on. Her father was a bit judgmental. She began her violin lessons at the age of 4. She had an IQ of 180. Oh my goodness. She entered her senior year at the age of 14, began Oberlin College at 16. Her father decided that conservatory was too limiting and transferred her to Michigan State. She defied her parents' wishes, went to the Juilliard school with only $30 in her pocket. Also includes a practice sheet from Dorothy DeLay, how she would have her students practicing. So if you're looking for specific practice methods, the DeLay practice sheet in here and creating a schedule is right here. Dorothy DeLay was such an incredible teacher. She was one of those first teachers, unlike Galamian, who was not like yelling and throwing and being this like angry teacher and taking out all of her emotions on her poor young students, which unfortunately is a very common thing in the music world. It used to be justified as okay a long time ago. Now people are starting to speak up, although it still does happen today. I have experienced it from professors and teachers myself in my life. But DeLay was not like that. DeLay was this loving, motherly and grandmotherly figure to her students. And this quote kind of just sums it all up. Kids become what you tell them they are, especially when they're sensitive. And kids are sensitive when they're younger like that. When people say, oh, this child wasn't born with it, so I won't waste my time with them. I won't teach them. They just don't have what it takes. In reality, it's the teacher trying to hide their own lack of ability to teach the student underneath that statement. Book 5, The Body Keeps the Score. I'm speechless because I don't know where to begin. So it's about the brain, the mind, and the body and the healing of trauma. I read this book over the summer. Just like Sasha's book, it changed me. It really changed my perspective on things. If you have been through any type of trauma and you are at a place where you are ready to start processing it and understanding it a little bit more and learning more about how your body can be affected by trauma that you've experienced, read this book. This book does take quite a bit of time and energy to read. It can also be very distressing if you're bringing up traumatic instances in your mind as you're reading this book and being reminded of traumatic things. So I would put a bit of a trigger label on this, and also just the disclaimer that it's heavy. It has heavy material, but it's also worded very heavily, but still highly recommend the book. Now, kind of going through the idea of trauma, I like how they define trauma at the beginning of the book, because when there's a traumatic situation that occurs to somebody, it can affect every single person around that person and become trauma for people around them. For instance, say there is a man that goes to war, a husband that goes to war, and he develops PTSD, and he comes home and he's reacting with all these PTSD emotions to his family. His wife then becomes depressed because he could become violent, stuff like that. Then the children can become really upset growing up with a depressed mother. That changes their childhood, and they're young children, these are their parents, and then they grow up really insecure and with a really anxious mind, and that is how trauma can be instilled in one person, but then from that trauma go directly to other people. They do give a lot of stories about people with different types of trauma. Trauma is not just the event that took place, but it's the imprints left by the experience on the mind, brain, and body. So a lot of people think that once you're away from that traumatic situation, once you're away from your abuser, once you're away from war, once the traumatic event has passed, that it's over and you're safe now and you're fine. And physically, in some ways you are. But that trauma is still left in your mind, and it's also left in your body. That's a big thing, is that some people can be really, really sick while trauma's occurring or after trauma's occurred immediately and be like, why am I so sick? Why won't my cold go away? Why do I keep getting all these infections? Why am I like waking up, throwing up during the night? And it can be your body's response to trauma and you don't even realize it. And you think that there's something more wrong and you schedule these doctor appointments and you try to get something checked and they're not finding anything. Oh, I'm sorry, I just hit his hand. Sorry. Book number 6, A Safe Place. The main character's name is Emily. So I'm like, well, okay, that's just like, required now for me to purchase the book. But it's about this lady, Emily, and she's an actress and she just lost her job. She lost her agent and she's about to lose her apartment. She meets this guy named Scott, and of course he's extremely wealthy and he offers her this job where she then meets his wife and Nina, and they have this really sweet girl, daughter, Aurelia, and I love that name too, Aurelia. That's also a music theory program I learned off of, so I just thought it was funny. And of course, it turns out that what looks like this beautiful family with Scott and Nina and Aurelia, there's a lot of dark secrets in the family that Emily discovers, and Emily protects the daughter then, and this whole stuff happens. It's so hard when I'm talking about books that have a storyline because I can't say anything more because I don't want to ruin the storyline. But I will say when I finished this book, like, it kind of like, I needed a day. Like, it was a lot. And that's something I like about mystery books, is that you can get really involved in the book. And that's exactly what happened. Book number 7, From the Stage to the Studio. So I'm not gonna lie, I actually read this book in 2022. This is one of my top favorite books for music teachers and musicians. So I wanted to kind of just like bring it out in place of another book that I might have read in 2023. Just because it means so much to me and I want to recommend it here. As the title states, From the Stage to the Studio by Cornelia Watkins and Laurie Scott, this book is for musicians, so violinists, violists, performers that want to start teaching and that might not have any experience teaching or might not have a music education degree and want to start their own private studio. So where do you go from there when you don't know child development, when you don't know how music education is, some of the core elements of music education, when you don't understand how to basically create like your own small business, managing a private studio? All of that stuff is in this book. So I would say any musician that is going to become a private teacher, read this book first, because it will tell you everything that you need to know about maintaining a private studio, policies that you need to have, how many students you want to have, how do you schedule in all those students when you probably have other gigs too if you're not solely a private teacher, how you manage your personal life, all that stuff. Now, I am a strong promoter of get that music education degree because I do believe that you can learn a lot from a music education degree. There's a lot that you can learn in a music ed degree that you won't get out of a performance degree. And that's why I have tried and am currently getting to get that double degree. So I'm getting a music education and violin performance degree within my time in school. And I think it's very helpful. It's a lot of work, but it's going to be worth it in the long run. So I do believe that performers that maybe are looking to make more money should not turn to private teaching as, I have to make more money, but I don't want to teach. Your heart has to be there as well. And I think that this book will also kind of help you figure out, is this something that I will truly be happy doing? Is there something that I think I can and will put my whole heart into for these kids or for my students? They give you ideas on how to present musicianship ideas to students. So they talk about tips and tricks of how to talk about rhythm, how to rehearse an orchestra, how to talk about genre, projects you can do for talking about form, like ways to explain this stuff to students. Because a lot of times, like, you know what form is, you know binary and ternary, but can you explain it to your student? And that's where that tricky part lies in there. And that is all in this book. So everything that you need to know about teaching private students, having a private studio, teaching adults, beginners, kids, whatever, is all in this book. And I would recommend it for every single musician. Book 8 is Music in Childhood, from preschool through the elementary grades, by Patricia, Shehan, Campbell, and Carol Scott Kassner. It talks about that early development of teaching children. So if you get a 4-year-old that wants to learn to play violin, it talks about teaching steady beat and all those little principles. And it kind of dives into some of that child development stuff as well. So if you don't have a music education degree, if you don't really understand where kids are in younger ages in terms of like fine motor skills, that is all in this book, and it kind of tells you how you can practice particular things. They also give you different songs to use for younger kids. They give the music in there. They give different ways that you can present music that isn't reading sheet music for like younger kids that can't process all of that stuff on the staff. Also give a few like scenarios that you might encounter with kids and how to properly handle certain scenarios. There's a technology chapter, so they talk about implementing technology in music and then within the classroom as well. They talk about just main principles that you want to be teaching in music. And then a big thing is that they talk about teaching students with disabilities, whether that's physical disabilities, learning disabilities, all different types of stuff. So they give ideas if you have a student that is blind and wants to learn to play music, how do you teach them? And it talks through like all these different things that you might encounter and how to incorporate those kids in the classroom just as much as you're incorporating the other students. Book 9 is Gone. A Girl, a Violin, and a Life Unstrung by Min Kym. So this is actually quite a famous violinist who is present in today's world, and it's about her story of losing her prized possession, her violin, and kind of the process that she went through and what happened afterwards. I think it really just brings awareness to some of the darkness that exists in the world. It doesn't solely focus on the time that she lost her violin, but they talk about in childhood, what it was like getting into music, what kind of family she grew up in, some hindrances she had when she was getting into music and how her family reacted and all the moving that she did and how her friends reacted and her sister. And it goes through basically her entire journey within violin and highlighting the good parts, but also spending time talking about the bad parts as well and the struggles that she had. And I think this is really good because it's a true book and it's like a storybook basically talking about all of her experiences. And so it's kind of cool if you're a musician or not a musician and you just want to read a book because it's just a storybook too. And finally, for book 10, the surprise is I'm not talking about a book for book 10 that I've already read. I'm going to talk about 5 books that I'm going to be reading in the future, just what I already kind of know about them. And eventually on my Instagram, I'll do a book review like usual, and then you'll get to see how the books turned out. Book 1 is Complaint by Sarah Ahmed, and it talks about abuses of power. So this really goes into how universities, conservatories, school, high levels of power can abuse people within the organization that are on lower levels of power. The teacher-student dynamic, how that can be abused, those types of things. This book mostly focuses on academia and how this all takes places in the academic world, which unfortunately, it happens more than people know because along with the abuse of power that happens, it's very easily for universities and those higher academic levels to silence victims of the abuse. Through threats, through so much. And I'm really excited to read this book and kind of see like what her input is on abuse of power. So looking forward to that. Book 2 is The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I have heard really great things about this. I believe it was Elizabeth Faley. I could be totally wrong, but she had some book recommendations, and I think this was one that she talked about, along with a book called Grit, which I'm still in and currently reading right now. But yeah, so I think it's going to be interesting, kind of like the Atomic Habits book. I feel like they're similar, like of highly effective people, 7 habits. So it's quite a lengthy book. I've just heard so many good things about it. Yeah, like over 400 pages. I've heard so many good things about it that I was like, you know what? I want to have my own opinion and perspective on it too. So I'm hoping to read this one very soon as well. Book 3 is a very special one. It is called Know My Name. It's written by Chanel Miller, the survivor of the Stanford sexual assault case, and she tells her story. So I'm just going to read the back of this book because I think it's very important. To girls everywhere, I am with you. On nights when you feel alone, I am with you. When people doubt you or dismiss you, I am with you. I fought every day for you, so never stop fighting. I believe you. So Chanel Miller's story changed our world forever. In 2016, Barack Turner was sentenced to just 6 months in jail after he was caught sexually assaulting her on Stanford's campus. His light sentencing and Chanel's victim impact statement, which was read by 11 million people in 4 days, sparked international outrage and action. So there's a lot there, and I'm sure that this would be a very heavy book for a lot of people, but I do think that the only way that our world can create change is by numbers, unfortunately. I think it's very important highlighting that Brock Turner only got 6 months, and I'm wondering, I don't know the full story, that's why I got the book, I'm wondering if he changed his name to, kind of move forward from his life without, just getting away with it and without retaliation, and just 6 months. I'm interested to see in how Chanel fought for herself and just reading more about her story and getting her story out there. So I can't wait to read this book and be able to do this book review on my Instagram and just get these stories out there. Because, back in time, like, people didn't talk about these things. It was hush hush, you don't talk about it. Now people are speaking about it, and it's still happening. Book 4 is An Anonymous Girl. So I also got this from the Half Price Bookstore. That's where I get like all of my like fiction, just kind of like storybook sorts of things. And I usually go in the mystery section because I think it's just a really great mental distraction to like throw yourself into this book and like be really into it. Yeah, so looking to earn some easy money, Jessica Ferris agrees to be a test subject in a psychological study about ethics and morality, but as the study moves from the exam room to the real world, the line between what is real and what is one of Dr. Shield's experiments blurs. And the 5th book I'm looking forward to reading is Surrounded by Idiots. I know a lot of people laugh at this title, but I've had my fair share of being around people that have really different, concerning, I think is the right word, perspectives on things. And I never really know, how do you handle that situation? Like, how do you function in a world where these types of people exist? What is my role in this? How can I make things better? And I'm hoping that that's kind of what this book does for me. I don't really know because I haven't read it. But they do talk about 4 key behavior types. There are the reds that are dominant and commanding. There are the yellows that are social and optimistic. There are the greens that are laid back and friendly. And then there are the blues, analytical and precise. So I don't know a lot actually about what that means. So that's why I'm really looking forward to reading this book and kind of just learning more about like behavior and people and like functioning in the society that exists today. And yeah, I think it should be really interesting. I hope that you enjoy this. Looking forward to doing more of these in the future. And if you are ever curious before I do another one of these, you can always go to my Instagram and I have a highlight. I believe it's orange right now and it just says books in it. And you can click on it. And I know a lot of the early books, I just have pictures of them because originally I was just going to have pictures of each book that I read that I thought was like specifically more relevant to music that I would recommend to people. But I also do have some newer ones over the past year that I started doing book reviews. So I will talk about some of the content in the book. I will kind of give a little rating, maybe out of 10, what I think the book was to me. So you can also look for that before I do another video like this. So thanks for hanging out with Casper and I. It's been a pleasure, but I hope that this was fun. It was fun for me.